Welcome to another Daily Dose of Planet Cool Stuff for you folks. I'm Rob McCallum, and happy Thanksgiving to all my American friends out there. I hope you are having a good day, a restful day, a day that might be filled with food, a day that might be filled with rest. I'm not sure how Thanksgiving works for a lot of people. I mean, when I ask people about Thanksgiving, it seems to be a 50-50 split that they love it or loathe it. It's not really consistent across the board, but I hope you're having a good one. And it's nice to be able to pop on here and talk to you today on Thanksgiving. It's not Thanksgiving in Canada. That's where I'm from right now. I did live in America, as some of you know, but now I live here, even though I was there. And I got to experience American Thanksgiving for almost 10 years. And I got to tell you, it was really kind of special. My experience with Thanksgiving was it was a bigger deal, a bigger family deal than Christmas, which doesn't feel like the case in Canada. In Canada, we have our Thanksgiving on your Columbus Day. So the second Monday in October is when we celebrate Thanksgiving, and it's connected to the harvest, getting all the crops together and having a nice, bountiful feast of delicious food. So I'm hoping that you're having a good Thanksgiving and that you are enjoying whatever you are doing now or whenever you happen to catch us, catch me. Whenever you catch me, I hope you're enjoying it. Today, I wanted to talk about a few different topics. You can see them right up here: wrestling, holiday traditions, other than Thanksgiving, AI, and tonight's big movie for me to watch. Although I guess it's classified as a TV series with the way that it's been listed, but we'll get to that. And of course, I have an action figure spotlight later to talk to you guys about as well. I'm glancing over there. You can kind of tell how I feel about it. I like to try to show good action figure spotlights, things that are really exciting for me. And I'm not sure that this figure scratches that itch. So let's jump in and we'll get to the first topic. All right. And the first topic I want to discuss is wrestling. Now, there's a lot of people that love wrestling. Wrestling is a very, very big center of entertainment. I mean, it's a big, big thing. At some point in your life, I'm sure wrestling has crossed into your purview and either gobsmacked you upside the face, completely hooked you, or sent you running in the other direction. It's just something that's unavoidable. I think of a lot of different things when wrestling comes to mind, from the 50s and 60s kind of wrestling to the 80s and 90s to, you know, everything in between, to, I guess, the demise of WCW and where we are now. Right? It's just there's a lot of different things to consider when it comes to wrestling. And of course, the biggest thing is WWE or WWF. It's never been bigger than that, although there has been a lot of other good promotions along the way. And so I guess if I was going to have a quintessential wrestling moment, and this is spurned by yesterday's discussion on those N64 THQ games, right? It was so easy to get hooked into those games, and then, well, you got to watch the stories that are happening, right? Got to watch my stories, my wrestling stories, and see what's going on. And my kids are into wrestling now too, for some reason. We don't, not to the point where we're watching stuff, but they conceptually like the idea of wrestling. They found my European Championship belt that I had from the Attitude Era. I bought it because we used to do a lot of wrestling play, and we would pass the belt around after we would play the N64 games. You know, could you win the belt? And if you did, then you got to take it home. And I didn't have any of the other belts, so that's why I have the European belt. I would have loved to have the Intercontinental belt or the World Heavyweight Championship belt, but nope. Got the European belt. I never understood why Europe had its own belt and what that really meant. I mean, I always looked at it as kind of like A wrestlers, B wrestlers, and kind of like new wrestlers or C wrestlers got the European belt. I don't really understood it. Like the Intercontinental stuff, I always found those matches way more interesting usually than the heavyweight matches, because those guys were like probably just as good as the heavyweight champions, but they're a little bit more flexible. They usually had a lot more storylines. There's a lot more Intercontinental champions, I felt. So it just seemed like a little faster bracket, a little more exciting than the stable. At least usually the championship level stuff was always like the same 6 to 8 people for any, 3, 4, 5 year run, just swapping stories and seeing what was coming. Every now and then you'd have an Intercontinental champion that would kind of climb up into the heavyweight division, but not usually. Not usually for long. You could usually see who was going to make it and who wasn't going to make it. And they always have to keep that division strong and stacked too, right? So, Rod Toys is saying those fights were so fun to watch too back in the day. Oh my goodness. What is your favorite era, man? What era of wrestling do you love the most? I want to say early 90s, right? Like the Hogan Warrior stuff, WrestleMania 6, and then the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels era. That's when I really kind of got into it, and like the rise of the Undertaker. That's when wrestling became exciting for me because it was this whole other it's the whole other thing that I'd never seen before. There was really nothing like it. I mean, and that's kind of the big question that I have is why does wrestling work? Right? I think it's basically like superheroes, right? You know, why do superheroes work? It's because there's larger than life characters that are so different from everybody else that we see, and that's wrestling to a T. Everything from the personas, the costumes, the way that the audience reacts to them, and of course their athletic ability or lack thereof. So again, my favorite moments are WrestleMania 6. I never got to go, but a close friend of mine got to go the Sky Dome and see WrestleMania 6 and see that iconic match where it was good guy versus good guy, Hogan versus Warrior. And still just thinking about it, I've never seen something as big as that. They tried to do it again, I think in 2002 with Hogan and The Rock. And a lot of people will say, oh yeah, it was just as good, but I don't think so. I don't think so because they were trying to emulate what they had done in 1991 with Hogan Warrior. So I don't think it lives up to that. AJ's chiming in. I followed WWE since about the mid 80s. Superheroes meet soap operas. You're not wrong, my friend. It's exactly what it is, right? Like I said, I gotta watch my wrestling stories. My stories are my everything, right? And then to have this fight, this ballet, this performance play out. Theater of the absurd, AJ. Yes. That's a great comment there. I love that. When does wrestling fail? And how is wrestling different now versus then? Those are some of the other questions I jotted down. I think wrestling fails when it does too hard of a brand change or when they push like their brand too far that you can't keep up anymore. And the era that I enjoyed and followed closely along was the Attitude Era. But looking back at it, it's absurd the stuff that they were doing on TV between the blood and the TNA that they were showing and all the sexual innuendos. They just kept pushing and pushing and pushing the boundaries to a point that it was unsustainable. And I even remember it getting a little boring to watch. Like, how are they going to top this thing? And if it didn't hit, then it torpedoed. It just was was not a good deal at all. Radjoy's Ultimate Warrior taking the belt from Hogan, it was a huge deal. Yeah. He hasn't watched it in years, and honestly, but it would be fun to go to a live event. Like, it's totally different vibe now. It is, and I think one of the big things they did with the Attitude Era, like I said, they took it so far that they made a big switch. Right. Once WCW ended and was acquired by WWE, they went to a full-on family-focused brand. So there wasn't going to be swearing anymore. There wasn't going to be drinking. Do you remember how often, like, they had like kegs of beer and like fire truck hoses connected to like beer barrels that would shoot the ring and spray the crowd with beer? Like, can't do that if you've got kids in the front row. And then, yeah, all the blood that was everywhere, all the, tables, ladders, and chairs. Oh my matches. Like, the stuff was crazy. And all those wrestlers really made a name for themselves. And there are a lot of the wrestlers that still have that legacy. They paid their dues in the Attitude Era. And now they've gone on to become staples and mainstays in both WWE and AEW, which is the new rival company. But when does it fail? I think it fails when you push the current trend or the current branding or mission beyond unsustainability where you can't do it anymore. And comics is guilty of this all the time, right? How do you keep pushing a storyline to something new where people keep reading issue after issue? You're tempted to do crossovers and kill characters off, but then you got to build everything back up again, and that becomes very difficult to do after a while. How do you bring people back from the dead? And wrestling is no different than comic books and superheroes in that case too. We've seen People die in the ring, people quit, people lose, and then there's always a way to get them back in. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. They have to be reborn as new characters sometimes. I think one of the biggest thing is, we got Rad Twice chiming in again here. He says, for me, it failed when I kind of grew out of it. It seems so silly now. Yeah, I wonder if there is an adolescent edge to that, because I was in it as a kid and then I really didn't watch it until I was in college. And then I've only dropped out of it because when I went to college, after my like early college years, when I moved away from home, I didn't have cable, and there was no real streaming in those eras that I could afford or that could deliver content in the early 2000s. So that's when I stopped watching, and now I find I just don't have the time to have, event must see TV where I got to sit down. Like before, remember it was like sit down Monday like at 9 o'clock to watch Raw. Raw is war. You would watch Raw and then you'd watch Warzone, which is the second half of the show. And you had to watch it because if you didn't, everything would be spoiled. Nowadays, and I think this is the big difference with wrestling between now and then, nowadays, social media, right? And the social media aspect of wrestling isn't necessarily about what's happening in the ring and at the events, although that stuff gets leaked really quick and a lot of people talk about what's going on. A lot of things for social media nowadays is what's happening behind the scenes and the business side of it. And it's like now it's almost like as a compelling story behind the scenes as it is in front of the cameras. B-Man chiming in, he's saying, I had a lot of great times watching PPVs at local bars with my buddies back in the day. We almost always cheered for the heels. So every old lady in the joint screaming at us to shut up. Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, yes. I remember renting cable boxes to try to get PPVs, pay-per-views for everybody out there. And that was so thrilling to get a special box and have your buddies come over and watch it. And when you couldn't do that, you book it to a bar on, I think they were mainly on Sunday nights, right? So we had school the next day. It was crazy to go to a bar, maybe a few years earlier than we should have been in bars. In Canada, drinking age is 19. Some provinces is 18. In Ontario, it's 19. And somehow we were able to get into these establishments and watch these pay-per-views until they ended, just after midnight or so. It was like a 3-hour card, right? Like 9 to sometimes 8:30 was the pre-show. And then it'd end like at 12. They always recap all the storylines for anybody that didn't kind of watch week to week to week so that you could just jump in and get familiar. AJ's chiming in. Will Studios. Raw is 3 hours and SmackDown is on Fridays is 2 hours. Plus WWE next NXT is 2 hours. Is it next? Is it NXT? Is that what it means? It's the up and coming wrestlers, right? It's 2 hours every week. That's a lot. That is 7 hours of content. A lot. Rad Toys is saying a lot of people I know use it as a social event like the playoffs or Super Bowl, and that's fun. Having a few drinks and chilling with friends. Yeah, anything that can bring people together, I think is awesome. I remember in the 90s, boxing was like that, right? Like Lennox Lewis, some of the Tyson kind of return matches. Let's get over and do this. And, everybody throws $5 in to afford the event and hang out, have a couple drinks and do that. It's crazy though, but like the behind the scenes drama, the business side is now almost taking a front row that's on the same parallel as everything that's happening in the ring. Who's leaving? Who said what? Why didn't somebody show up to the event? Who got fired? What was the real deal? Who's signing where? If you can find a way to incorporate that into the storylines, man, that can kind of be fun. Where does that line blur? But it's people's lives too, right? It's their livelihood. And it's always weird too at first when you have somebody known as a character in the ring and all of a sudden, that was like always the cool wrestling insider stuff to grow up. Did you know that The Undertaker's real name is Mark Calloway? It's like, oh no, The Undertaker doesn't have a real name. He's just The Undertaker. He's from Parts Unknown, right? Or Death Valley or whatever it is. Warrior was from Parts Unknown. You can see the knowledge is a little rusty, but I'd love to get back in there. And it always pops up in my feed. Did you know this story about wrestling? Did you know that this went down behind the scenes? And I always find that interesting. I guess, as a documentary filmmaker, I kind of just prone to like the story behind the story. So I'd love to hear what your favorite wrestling rivalries and moments were. Chime in the chat, leave a comment on YouTube. Let me know what you think about that. It's different now. And I see a lot of people really trying to compare AEW to WWE because, AEW is the new WCW, or is that even fair to say? Can you say that? Can you make that comparison? I think you can. They have a lot of top tier talent that used to be WWE talent, and now they're their own thing, doing their own thing. Then a lot of people have pros and cons for each. So I hope whatever wrestling you're into or we're into, that it left a good mark on you. And it's undeniable the impact that entertainment, that sports entertainment has played on us. It's good. I'm sure we'll return to wrestling in the future. So let's talk holiday traditions for a minute, because it is Thanksgiving, of course, in the U.S. But of course, Thanksgiving is really the beginning of the the other holidays, the Christmas holidays, the winter holidays. I don't know if we can call them Christmas holidays or if we can just call it the holiday season. I'm always fuzzy on what we're allowed to say, so I apologize. It's Christmas for me. I celebrate Christmas, but I say happy holidays to you, whatever you celebrate. It's an extension of the goodwill, right? Just like if somebody were to say something to me that about something I don't celebrate, I would understand their intentions. So what are your holiday traditions? For me, there wasn't a lot growing up. There might be some family stuff here and there. We never had big parties or anything like that. Christmas Eve, my grandparents would usually go to a neighbor's house and have a few drinks, and I would end up at Jay's place until like midnight or so. And we would always just watch a movie and have a few drinks, because both his house and my house never did anything big on Christmas. We never even had a lot of family over for Christmas dinner. Sometimes we'd have one or two people if they were staying for the holidays, for the week, between Christmas and New Year's or so, but nothing, anything crazy. So for me, the tradition has always been around movies, both leading up to Christmas and then on Christmas itself. My favorite thing to do was always get a movie on Christmas, and after Christmas morning kind of wrapped up and we had breakfast or whatever, I would just chill out. I put a movie on, and that would be like just kind of like my zen zone to just kind of appreciate it and just chill out and enjoy something new that wasn't so big and grand in the spectacle. It's just a comforting kind of thing that I used to do. And now leading up to it, of course, there's no shortage of Christmas movies. I mean, look no further than everything that Hallmark is churning out, right? And some people despise those Hallmark Christmas movies. I think it's awesome, right? It's like, how many different ways can you write a Christmas song? How many different kind of movies can you write? A Christmas movie is kind of like the ultimate movie, because you can write about anything. And it's always about, wanting to find love and kindness, and it's a big transformational thing. Let's just get to my favorite movies, because I'm sure you have your favorite holiday movies, and I've got five. One of them's a special, I guess, but it is 45 minutes long, so I guess in some circles be considered a movie. Uh, it starts with Muppet Family Christmas. Now, if you haven't seen Muppet Family Christmas, this was made, I believe, in 1987. It was one of the last Muppet productions that Jim Henson was involved in. And it not only involves the core group of Muppets from the Muppet Show, but it also involves the Sesame Street Muppets as well, and the Fraggles from Fraggle Rock. It was kind of, in my opinion, the pinnacle of the Muppet era, because Fraggle Rock had happened. The Muppet Show was off the air for about 5 years at that point, but those characters were still very much in the consciousness of the country, because it was just starting to go into syndication in a lot of different places. And for me, as a 6-year-old, I remember watching this special and routinely watching the Muppet Show every single day. The Muppet Show has informed my sense of humor. That's definitely one of the staples. And so and then of course Sesame Street growing up was everything to me. Sesame Street, Mr. Dress Up, Fred Penner. Those are the shows that I really gravitated to. So to have a special with the Muppets and the Sesame Street characters, and to play off all, like, the writing is just maybe the best Muppet writing ever. Right. And it's, again, all centered around Christmas and what makes the Muppets at Christmas work. And there's tons of Muppet Christmas stuff. We'll get to another one. Let's see if you can guess it. There's tons of what makes that work is you have all these assorted characters, these oddball characters, and they come together for one thing, right? That is Christmas in a nutshell. That is any holiday get together, right? So B Man is saying Muppet Family Christmas, the most ambitious crossover ever. Yes, I agree. It's a pretty big crossover, and it was shot in Canada, in Toronto. And I'm happy to know that a few people that actually were on the producing team. And if you watch the documentary, I Am Big Bird, that focuses on Carol Spinney and his somewhat final years of being on Sesame Street, directed by my good friend Chad Walker, There's some behind the scenes footage of making Muppet Family Christmas too that I was just blown away to see. So I should do another deep dive to see if I can find some behind the scenes footage on making that special. Rad Toys is chiming in again on Hallmark movies. Hallmark movies are funny. It's always girl goes to hometown after divorce or bad breakup, hooks up with her high school sweetheart, and lives happily ever after. I'm sure that's a template that gets used a little bit here. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with it? You've seen enough, I can tell, to pick up the pattern and still tune in to see if others cater to it or do not cater to it. That's funny. So next on my list after Muppet Family Christmas would be White Christmas with Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Rosemary Clooney, and Vera Ellen. This is, one of those classic Christmas movies. It's probably not on a lot of people's list, but it's a movie that I hadn't seen until a couple of years ago. And what I love about it, it's about these two showbiz partners that have kind of made it after serving some time in the war. One of them, has got big ambitions. The other is kind of more like the pure natural talent. They team up and they become a sensation. And just when they're about to take their holidays, they meet these two girls that one of them is totally interested in the other, not really, even though he falls for them. And they end up helping these girls who have their own act. And the scene I love most in White Christmas is they spend an entire night on the bar car in a train as they go from Florida all the way up north, I think to New Hampshire, or maybe it's Vermont. And it's supposed to be this big, snowy, white Christmas, but it's not. It's unseasonably warm. And where they end up going is to this chalet that's run by their former commanding officer who's going to lose the place. And these two want to put on a show to help save it and bring everybody there. But I tell you, that bar car scene, the idea of traveling through the night and just being on the road, there's just something about that speaks to me every time. I love it. So if you haven't checked out White Christmas, check it out. Next, Christmas Story. What else needs to be said about Christmas Story, right? AJ saying, yeah, White Christmas. Haven't seen that in years. It is a classic. Radtoy saying, you got me. I've watched them. Yeah, you have watched all. You have watched all the Hallmark movies. He's also saying A Christmas Story and that old Rudolph from Must Watch. The Rankin Bass stop motion Rudolph and Santa Claus Goes to Town, for that matter, by Rankin Bass. All that stuff is great. Christmas Story is number 3 on my list. And now with kids too, watching them grow up. And my kids are 9 and 5.5, so it's very much Ralphie and Randy kind of stuff. It's so good. It's so good. And now because I am a parent trying to preserve that Christmas magic and make it larger than life, that movie rings more true now than ever before. Number 2 on my list, Christmas Vacation. I can't help but laugh from beginning to the end of Christmas Vacation every single time. All the same gags get me. I'm not even noticing new stuff anymore, but I absolutely love the film. And the scene that always gets me is when he's in the attic and he's watching the old movies of what his Christmas was like. Because all he wants to do is give his kids the kind of Christmases that he used to have, that he remembers so fondly, that made him who he is. And that's what we all want as parents, right? That just magic. Duke's chiming in. You love Christmas Vacation. It's there's just something so good about it. I love the silly sense of humor to the adult sense of humor, the rivalry with the neighbors. It's just so good. Last on my list, Muppet Christmas Carol. It has to be Muppet Christmas Carol. I love the story of A Christmas Carol. I'll watch any version of it just to see what they draw upon from the original book, to see how they differ from one another. I love that it's a ghost story. It's a supernatural story about learning to be better and atoning for the things that you've done, just to make the world a better place, to do your part, to have a smile when it's so easy to frown, and think for oneself, to go the distance, right? And be better for your fellow person. I love A Christmas Carol. And the rule is, if you love a movie, you will love it 100 times more if the Muppets do their version, which is 100% the rule. The Muppets do anything, it's better. It happened with Treasure Island. It happens with all their parodies. Even the short little sketches that they used to do on the Muppet Show, they're always better with Muppets. Muppets make everything better. That's what AJ's chiming in. He's saying Christmas Story, Christmas Carol with Alistair Sims from 51. Yeah, that's the Sims Christmas Carol is a staple for many people. I haven't watched it probably in 5 or 6 years, so I should. It's due for this year, so I'll check that out. Rod Toy saying, ever seen Santa's Sleigh with Goldberg? No, I have not seen that one. That seems that's a good crossover with our wrestling topic. Maybe I'll try to find that out this year. Duke's chiming in. Michael Caine makes Muppet Christmas Carol. He makes it because he doesn't act silly. That's right. I read something the other day that said what makes that film work is he treats the Muppets like other actors, right? And what makes Muppet Treasure Island work, and why Tim Curry is so great in that, is he doesn't treat them like other actors. He treats himself like a Muppet. So like everybody gets on the same ground, and that's when it works, right? You don't give into it. You play it straight, or you play it Muppet. So I hope you are getting ready for your holiday traditions or whatever they might be, whether it includes X number of days of watching movies every night, a new movie like you do in October for Halloween, although some of us start in September because Forever Halloween is a mantra for sure. I used to remember back in the day that TBS would do like 29 days of 007, and every day they'd have a new James Bond movie on. Oh, I missed that. James Bond and Christmas. I didn't even think about that till now. That is another huge connection for me at Christmas time, watching the James Bond movies every night leading up to that. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, we're going to move on to the next topic. And that's AI. So AI and entertainment specifically. Now, there's been a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, and I'm sure you've seen the news about the Hollywood strikes, both the actor side and the writer's side. And AI was a big deal and how it's going to be used and what the studios can do to get away with using it under what conditions and how far it can get pushed. But I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about AI and music in particularly, because it's not something that I've seen a lot of people discuss. And I think it can get kind of crazy. Like I am, Rad Twice is chiming back in quickly. He loves Looney Tunes and Mickey's Christmas Carol. I love Scrooge McDuck. So Mickey's Christmas Carol, which is really a Scrooge cartoon, is awesome. John Lasseter worked on that too. AI and music. So there's a new Green Day album coming out. You guys know I'm a big Green Day fan. Saviors. It comes out in January. And I thought, what if these singles that I'm listening to now weren't even written by the band, but the sound of the band, every Green Day song ever written was fed into a machine. All the tracks and everything were separated and isolated. And what if a machine somewhere is going to just make this new song, right? Which would be a lot easier to convince somebody listening to it than having to watch, say, something. Although with all the de-aging stuff we see in Hollywood when it comes to movies, using AI to match old footage to something new and use lines and cater voices and change pitches and stuff, we're not far off from doing it on the movie side. But what if like the new Green Day album was all AI? Right? Or like, hey, there's a lost Led Zeppelin album, but it's just AI. And how about everything we listen to is just machine created for us, right? We're already getting machine learning. We've had that for years. But, like even on YouTube, it's like, hey, you watch this video, you might like this one based on your viewing habits and how long you watch and the subjects that you like watching. Apple Music does it too, Spotify. Machines are learning our preferences and our habits, and it's getting to the point where this could happen, right? I listened to Strike Force 5, which was a limited podcast by all the late night talk show hosts, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, John Oliver, and Seth Meyers. And they were doing this podcast to raise funds to pay their writing staff while the writer strike was going on. And one of the things that they were dealing with was AI. And I believe it's Stephen Colbert paid $30 for a minute sample of AI, and he fed the machine samples of everybody's voices, and he got back a minute clip. And you couldn't tell the difference. It was pretty spot on. And it was a roundtable chat, the podcast, and he got a roundtable clip. And it was scary close, right? And so what do we do in a world where we can't tell the difference between real and fake? And that's what is at the heart of a lot of this AI fear in discussion. And I just thought, on the one hand, it's wow, I get everything that I want. But we've been talking all week, about our expectations of entertainment, the love of the new. Give me something new and exciting. It's that valley of the lost, though, that I'm afraid, right? So when you're creating art, you can approach a point where it's so good that it becomes actually closer to being so fake, right? Look at CG. As CG was evolving, the better the graphics were getting, you reach a point where it gets so good that you can actually tell it's more fake than it is more real. And now we're starting to erase what that is because technology is catching up. And so I do wonder what a world would be like when AI is kind of in control of what makes entertainment. Would it be entertaining anymore? Is it just a series of buttons that get pushed in our brain with what we see on this screen to feel happy or sad at the right moments? Is it like a structural thing where it's like, oh well, we're 5 minutes in, we should start crying, or we should know this about our characters, or we should know this is the kind of stuff we should hear in this song. This is the stuff that's going to really change our world going forward, right? Can you imagine getting an AI produced album of your favorite band and what that's going to be like if you know the difference? I wonder what band, and we'll just stick with music. I wonder what band is going to be the first to put out an AI song where they just feed all their stuff into a machine and release it and say, here you go. And then pull the curtain down and say, that was fake. And that's why we have to stop this. Now, thankfully, there are a lot of safeguards in place with unions and ethical and responsibilities with that human created stuff is much more important. But you can see how that argument down the road is going to get um, more difficult, right? Growing up, I still remember it's like, computers are going to take away our jobs. There are obviously new jobs that have to be put in place for the computers, but is this the same argument or is it something different? Really, really scary time. Brad Twice is chiming in. AI is fun to mess with, but I'm not sure what to do, what that will do to people's creativity. I'd like to say, that AI will never be a substitute for the human mind when it comes to creativity because it'll never understand the human experience, which is what I think fuels our creativity as artists, whether we're filmmakers, musicians, or painters or sculptors. I think who we are and what we love is a genuine piece of fuel to all of that. I think that's what gets us up every morning, gets us excited. And I think without that motivation, I don't think you can create something genuine. Kind of when you see a movie that seems phoned in, that's kind of paint by the numbers and they're just trying to make money, stuff like that. I mean, I think people are obviously always trying to do a really good thing with their job, but you can tell when somebody's given up and they're there for a paycheck as well. And I don't want to live in a paycheck paradise, right? With the stuff that I watch and listen to. So just food for thought. Let's move on to our final topic, guys. This is a little bit more exciting too, a little less drab. Tonight's movie. What am I watching tonight? Well, yesterday we talked about the GoldenEye documentary, Golden Era, that looked at the creation of the N64 game with Rare, directed by my new good friend Drew Roller. Tonight, I want to take a look at Robo Doc. Do you know what Robo Doc is? Robo Doc is a new documentary. Technically, it's a documentary series because there's 4 episodes that are a little over an hour each. So it's almost a 5-hour affair, 4.5 hours, that looks at the creation of Robo Cop. Now, Robo Cop, where do you guys sit with Robo Cop? Is he like just this weird, obscure superhero? Or is this something like bigger, like mainstream? I mean, let's think about it. I think there was 3 movies, right? There was a reboot attempt. I mean, it wasn't an attempt, it came out, but I didn't love it so much. There was a TV show, I believe. There was a cartoon. There's lots of toys. There must have been comic books. I'm not the RoboCop aficionado, although I was really into RoboCop a lot. And there were certainly several video games as well, including a new one that looks like super realistic, and a lot of people are praising or getting excited with the over-the-top violence, much like the first movie, right? And NECA is releasing a ton of new toys. I think I don't know if it's today or tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow on Black Friday. They release an Alex Murphy figure, like pre-RoboCop Alex Murphy, and they have all sorts of attachments that you can put on their hands, whereas like hand is just exploding. Right? I'm not going to do it. That's a good movie. Or is it a good movie? Did you like it? Duke's chiming in. RoboCop 1 was one of the best movies of the 80s. The rest is garbage. Are you saying RoboCop 2, directed by Irvin Kershner, the director of Empire Strikes Back, is not a good movie? I always thought it was weird, the RoboCop versus RoboCop fight and the whole hunting down the drug nuke. The third one is where he gets the flying jetpack. Yeah. Rad Toys is chiming in. Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, it sounds very cool. Well, I'm hoping it's cool. It was a pretty affordable to have 4.5 hours. I would think it was like $17 Canadian or something like that. My account's in America, so it's like $12.99. So I think it's like $17 Canadian. But where does RoboCop sit with you guys? Is it just something firmly from the 80s? Is this something that we need to carry with us? RoboCop appeared in a WCW segment? That's amazing. Oh my God. Every topic today is like unconsciously, subconsciously connected. Thank you for that. RoboCop vs. Terminator was a great game. I did not like the NES game. I think it was by Data East. I found it very hard and very stiff, much like RoboCop. Is it just something from the 80s, or is this something that is it like Judge Dredd? Does it fall into that kind of territory where it's a big character, but only for like people that are like below the surface of like top 40 mainstream? Where does RoboCop sit for you guys? I'm a really big fan of Paul Verhoeven. Well, not a really big fan, but any director that makes 3 films that I appreciate, I can say I'm a fan of them. So Paul Verhoeven did RoboCop. He did Total Recall, another great 80s film. And he also did Starship Troopers. You can see the similarities between all of them. And of course, I think he directed Showgirls as well. So there's this notoriety for this spectacle in all of his films. But RoboCop, Total Recall, and Starship Troopers in particular are 3 of my favorite films for their commentary on society and the political climate and the time that they were made. Do you guys like any of those films? I think out of all of them, well, I think they all kind of stay with us to the same degree, but RoboCop probably more because it's crossed the most media boundaries. Like I said, comics, video games, toys, cartoons, multiple movies, TV show. Starship Troopers, of course, was based on a book. I don't know the origins of RoboCop. Was it based on a comic or anything first, or was it a movie first? I'm not sure. You guys are the experts on that one, but I'm going to check it out tonight. And tomorrow we're going to talk about RoboCop, the documentary, RoboDoc. I'll let you know how it is. I don't know if I can get through all 5 hours, but I hope I can get through 1 or so, and that'll dictate where we go tomorrow. Tomorrow is Black Friday, and growing up, Black Friday was not a big deal in Canada. When I moved back to Canada, suddenly it was. So I'm not sure why. Before I continue, AJ is chiming in here. Never been a big fan of RoboCop myself, but I can appreciate the fan base it has. The character is still talked about today. I believe it was a movie first. And at one point, I think they even wanted a statue of RoboCop in Detroit, but they refused to do that. Maybe they'll get a statue of Ed 209. That'd be awesome. But Black Friday is tomorrow, and best wishes to everybody who is doing the Black Friday thing, and I want to just remind you that I understand the importance of saving cash, especially nowadays. I mean, I can't get over the cost of groceries. It's absolutely ridiculous how much food is costing. So I understand why people want to save money and get the best deals that they can. But there's a difference between saving cash and, and guaranteeing you can give the best Christmas ever or having the best Christmas ever. I promise you, while people will remember some iconic gifts that they get as kids in particular, nothing will matter more the investment you make with time and spending energy with people. That's the stuff that's way more valuable, and that's the stuff that sticks with you, right? Growing up. So please, please, please invest in people, not in products when you can. Don't do that. So Rad Toys is chiming in one more. I can't believe they never took Starship Troopers further. The sequels are a bit rough. I did like the animated series. It was early CG, but Rico's Roughnecks was a pretty good animated series. So there you go. I guess I should get to my action figure spotlight that I teased. Oh, I really don't want to talk about it, so I'll do it just for you guys. So you guys have seen Masters Universe Revelation. This is the Skeletor figure that came out for that, okay? This is not the spotlight, but I just want to show you Skeletor in case you're unfamiliar with it. So pretty accurate looking Skeletor from the show. I don't necessarily love the design, but I don't hate it. It's just different, That's okay. So that's that. Recently, in support of Masters Universe Revolution, the next kind of chapter, next 10 episode chapter in the Masters Universe saga on Netflix, and probably the last one, comes out in January. They tease that there's going to be some connection with Skeletor and the Horde. I think it's a flashback, but this is Just Skeletor, but it was labeled online as Horde Apprentice Skeletor. Now, the big difference is he's got a belt, a Horde belt there that you can see. It's red there. His armor has the red lining underneath. You can see right there. It's just kind of cloaked in red. His face has got a bit of a different wash on it. Do a little bit comparison time for you. Bit of a different wash on it. But it's 90% the same figure. The hands are a little bit different. It's like this one just has a lot of red accents and outlines and a different face wash. So the question is, did I just buy a new Skeletor for different accessories? I thought it would be a little bit different. It doesn't even say Horde Apprentice on the package. Can you tell I'm disappointed? I'm pretty disappointed. This felt like a bit of a cash grab. I'm not getting it. There's like nothing even glows in the dark. There's nothing that's translucent. I'm disappointed. You know, for a $30 figure, American dollars, you would expect something a little bit different, but so be it. That's what you get with toys nowadays, Rob. That's what you get. So that's that. On from that, though, again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there that's watching. I appreciate you taking the time. Again, the Planet Cool Stuff Kickstarter is live. We are over 75% now. So if you want to score yourself a copy of our 13-episode doc series on everything pop culture, video games, toys, movies, TVs, music, and everything that's in between, cartoons, jump on board. Go to Kickstarter, search Planet Cool Stuff. You will see it. Get yourself a DVD. Cement that. Save physical media. You will also get a digital copy of the series. You can also get a really bad sketch from me. When you become a backer, you get exclusive add-on options. They're not even visible until you decide that you're going to back. And one of them is to get me to draw a really bad sketch of your favorite pop culture character. I will do that for you if you become a backer. So thanks for all your support on that. Thank you for watching this today. We will see you tomorrow. If you've got ideas for tomorrow's stream, just reach out. I'm happy to incorporate them, and wish me luck on the Robo Cop documentary. Take care, guys.